I realized something wild the other day. I have been a Wayfair customer for 10 years. I opened up the app on my phone and looked at my account. My first order was placed in 2015, and I've been consistently ordering from Wayfair ever since then. And the holidays are coming up. And so if you are somebody who is like me and has really old holiday decor, maybe a refresh is in order. Whether it's fresh bedding, cozy throws, or even some new holiday decor to make your house feel festive, Wayfair honestly has everything. What I love the most is no matter what your budget is or your style, you can find exactly what you want, from moody and dark academia pieces, which is what I love, or holiday sparkle, full on farmhouse, whatever it is that you want. Shipping is free and fast, even for big furniture. So if you're getting your home ready for the holidays, or you just want a little extra magic this season, Wayfair makes it easy. Get organized, refreshed, and ready for the holidays for way less. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop all things home. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair. Every style, every home. Decentering Men isn't about rejecting men at all. It's not about being mad at them. It's not about hating them at all. I love men. It's about claiming yourself. That's it. It's about claiming yourself in a system and a culture and a society that has taught us to not do that, to not make ourselves the priority in our own lives, to the point where we get to a place in our lives where sometimes we look around and we're like, how did I get here to this place where I have so much work to do and just making my life about me and not other people? It's learning how to live slightly differently than what our current system taught us to do. You're listening to Make Some Noise podcast, episode number 699. Welcome to Make Some Noise podcast, your guide for strategies, tools, and insight to empower yourself. I'm your host, Andrea Owen, global speaker, entrepreneur, life coach since 2007, and author of 3 books that have been translated into 18 languages and are available in 22 countries. Each week, I'll bring you a guest or a lesson that will help you maximize unshakable confidence, master resilience, and make some noise in your life. You ready? Let's go. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the podcast. I am so glad that you are here. Hey, a little bit of a gift for those of you who listen to the podcast and who listen to this intro, because that's where I'm saying it. So as I've told you, my next book, Live Like You Give a Damn, is going to be published December 9th, 2025. But if you would like a digital version of it for free, it's on NetGalley, and I'm going to post the link in my show notes to this episode. So if you go to the episode show notes, $6.99, and grab that link, you can either have a peek or read the whole thing. It is digital only though. So go over to the show notes to do that. AndreaOwen.com/699. And thank you to those of you who listen to the podcast enough to be able to get that little gift from me to you. Make sure that you're on my newsletter list too, because there's going to be fun, free stuff coming out around the time that the book comes out in December. AndreaOwen.com/free if you don't get my weekly emails. And lastly, I am also updating my psychedelic therapy private podcast that I have. I'm about more than halfway through telling you all about my ketamine journeys, as well as about halfway through talking to you about what happened when I did 4 back-to-back ayahuasca ceremonies over the summer, this last summer. And that is at AndreaOwen.com/journey to be on that private podcast email list. And you'll get an email whenever I release a new episode on that. So this week is about part two of Decentering Men. And I realized this morning when I went to record this episode, I shouldn't have called it Decentering Men, because this is really about decentering anyone in your life that isn't you. This could be really about decentering work. It could be about decentering, even if you're in a place where you don't have great boundaries with your children. You could use everything I'm talking about, most of the things I'm talking about, unless it's work and Work is different because you can't have a conversation with work as a whole, but you can have conversations with people that you work with, managers, your team, etc. So it's not just about men. Obviously, in the last episode, I did talk about how we've been set up to center men in our life. But really, if you are someone who was socialized as a girl and then a woman in your life, then you probably are also entitled to damages. No, I'm just kidding. Kind of kidding. But you've probably been socialized and conditioned to not center yourself. And that's what this is about. The reason that I wanted to do these episodes is because I see it as a prevalent thing in my clients. I have seen it in my own life just come and knock me over at one point, which brings me to the third reason I wanted to bring these episodes to you is because I do believe that when we reach midlife is when we really sort of tip over. And I'm speaking generally here. I don't think this happens necessarily to everyone, to every woman, but we reach a point where we become a lot less tolerant of it. And typically when we feel that capacity lowering, the capacity for putting everyone else before us, sometimes it isn't clear at first what that actual problem is. So we might feel tension and irritation and frustration just around our whole life in general, like a sense of overwhelm, a sense of irritation. We might blame it on things that aren't really the culprit. So it could be a myriad of things that we blame it on. But I think at the end of the day, sometimes when we do enough digging, when we get curious enough, we start to realize that the reason that we're having perhaps these massive feelings of overwhelm, which can bleed into insomnia and added anxiety or just some other mental health struggle that we might not have in our life previously, or maybe just small amounts, and all of a sudden it becomes big. It's sometimes because we have spent our entire life centering other people and other things before ourselves. So 2 weeks ago was part one. I mostly talked about the problem, what it looks like when you don't center yourself, what it looks like when you center men, and what it costs you. I'm going to leave that over there from 2 weeks ago. Today, I want to talk about solution. How do we anchor these solutions? How do we integrate this kind of work? How can we decenter other people and center ourselves in our own life? Make ourselves our own sun, S-U-N, in our orbit. This can feel a little disorienting, I'll tell you that much, and abrupt, and it doesn't have to. I don't recommend that you sort of walk in like I did. The way I did it, and I mentioned this 2 weeks ago, is I started behaving differently without having a conversation with my partner about it. I just was like, I wonder what would happen if I did this. I wonder what would happen if I stopped doing that. And I did those things as more of an experiment. And what I suspected happened. I didn't expect it to be as, I didn't expect the level of reaction that I did. The reaction I got was more than what I had originally anticipated, which is telling. But I don't recommend that. I definitely recommend having conversations, which I'm going to get into when I talk about solutions. So I tried to break it down into different areas to make it a little bit more organized. So I'm going to give you several different options for solution. Like, how do we stop self-abandoning? How do we start centering ourselves? I do not under any circumstances expect you to do all of these. Like, this isn't a to-do list for the month of November. It's a list for you to think about the areas where you have options to work on. And at the end, I'm going to talk about this. Pick one or two, or if that feels like too much, just pick a handful of these and journal on what might happen if you did that. What might happen for you internally, not even externally. How would this make you feel doing some of the things that I'm going to talk about? And if your answer over and over again is massive discomfort, guilt, feeling like I'm going to get in trouble, those types of things, that is something for you to think about. All right, so let's jump into solutions. And if you are listening to this episode raw. In other words, if you haven't listened to part 1, this might not make a whole lot of sense to you. So I highly recommend going back to 697. And that is the episode of part 1 where I talk more about what is the problem and what it's costing you. All right. The first thing, as always, my friends, awareness and naming. You have to name it to tame it. You cannot do the work unless you are very clear about what it is you're doing the work on and what your goal is. That's always going to be the first step. So if you're currently in a place where you're thinking, I'm not even sure if I do this, I don't even know if I am someone who has always centered men or center men in my life or center someone else besides myself, here's what I want you to do. And this is for anyone. Anytime you are having a conversation with someone or you have been tasked to do something and you feel like that immediate, like, I don't want to do this thing, but you do it anyway, that might be a flag for you to ask yourself a question. Am I doing this for someone else's comfort? And is it warranted? For example, if you are exhausted and you have a baby and that baby, you find out somehow through fussing or whatever, needs to eat, you are going to feed that baby. And is it maybe something that you want to do in that moment? No, maybe you're exhausted and you're tired. That would be something that is warranted, right? Like if you are inconveniencing yourself, if you are doing something for someone else's comfort, even if you really don't want to do it, there are some things that are warranted. That was a very obvious example I gave you. But I'm talking about other things. If you are, for example, making plans to do something and there is, perhaps your partner wants to do it a certain way or go to a certain place that you really don't want to go to, or there's something that you don't want to do, doesn't matter what it is, if it's the timing, if it's the place, if it's whatever the circumstance, ask yourself, am I doing this for their comfort? Am I doing it to avoid conflict? Am I saying yes to this, or am I making this decision in order to make this other person's life more convenient or have them avoid an inconvenience? Do you guys remember in Make Some Noise when in the introduction to that book, I talked about asking yourself the question, what is my conditioning versus what is my truth? This is similar to that question. It's about pausing before you react or before you act or before you engage in something that's probably become a habit for you. You pause and you ask yourself these types of questions. This is the first step of self-awareness, is just the pause, because I know you're like me, and like all humans, we get into habits and we do not think about them before we act. Putting someone else first is no different than reaching for your toothbrush at the end of the night for your whole nighttime routine to brush your teeth. We get into these habits and we do them without even knowing. So pausing before you act to ask yourself a fairly simple question, which may take you a moment to even answer, that is practicing self-awareness, and it's also practicing curiosity. So you're coming into it without judgment. You're coming into it without trying not to have any kind of bias or assumption about what the answer is going to be. It is pausing. It is curiosity. You're collecting data. If you answer a question to yourself, and maybe the question that you asked is, am I doing this for someone else's comfort? And then you realize, yes, I am doing this for someone else's comfort, even though I don't want to do this thing. Oh my gosh, I've created this habit. Okay, I want you to pause. If you have sort of like a big moment of self-awareness, pause before you react. This is not necessarily the time to, throw papers up in the air, flip tables, and throw your middle finger in the air. I don't recommend that. That would usually be my reaction too, so I get it. Just keep breathing and name to yourself what's happening. That's all. And it can just be something as neutral as, oh, okay, wow, that's happening. That I am realizing that I'm doing this thing that I don't want to do. Oh, look at me, looking at the root of what is causing my frustration or whatever emotion that you're feeling. So at this point, this is just awareness and naming. All right, the next one is what I'm calling micro choices. So this starts with what some people call the 2 yes rule. And it is when you are intentionally saying yes to things and you can tell that both your body and your mind, your brain, your thoughts are saying yes. This can be tricky for people who, and this was me at one point in my life for sure, who struggle a little bit with somatic work, from listening to your body, listening to your intuition, things like that. And so if that's you, it's okay. It's just where you're at on the path, but try to answer questions by taking a moment and noticing how it feels in your body. So you can start with simple things like, do I want, maybe it's something that you absolutely don't want to eat for lunch, just so you can like know what it feels like in your body. When you say, do I want a Vegemite sandwich? For anyone who's had Vegemite, you know. And if you're Australian and you're listening to this and you love Vegemite, I'm sorry to insult your native food. But do I want a Vegemite sandwich for lunch right now? A warm one. My body immediately is like, no, it feels contractive. It feels like, no, like I want to put my arms in front of my mouth. No, keep that away from me. Get into the habit of knowing what it feels like to have a full body yes and a full body no. And does that equal the answer, the thought in your head? So it's really like micro choices is just practice knowing what your body and your mind feel like, sound like when you're saying yes. That way it will become easier when you start to try to center yourself more, because you're going to be saying no a lot more. The other micro choice is understanding exactly why you are doing this particular work. So when you are making these kinds of choices, and they become sometimes harder and harder when you're making bigger choices to say no, you automatically know why you are making the choice that you're making. So for example, for me, when I was in my journey of decentering men and trying to center myself, make myself the sun in my life, it helped me to know the reason why I was doing this big work. So for example, as time started to pass and I realized, oh, okay, it is time for me to leave this particular marriage that I am in. It helped me to know and understand that this choice was because I was choosing myself. Pretty much like I was choosing myself exclusively for the first time ever in my life, because our minds start to panic. So it's not a real big exercise, just getting clear on why. Why are you looking at the choices that you make? Why are you listening to this particular podcast episode and are interested in it? Why? It could be just as simple as I'm making myself a priority. I'm putting myself first. All right, we need to take a quick ad break. When we get back, I'm going to talk about your nervous system. I'm going to talk about boundaries. I'm going to talk about money. Okay, be right back. One thing I do a decent amount of is help people find a therapist. It's incredibly important to find someone who's not only a good match, but also within your budget and can get started sooner rather than later. Trying to find a therapist shouldn't feel like online dating with an incredibly high deductible. Grow Therapy gets that. Whether it's your first time in therapy or your 50th, Grow makes it easier to find a therapist. They connect you with thousands of independent, licensed therapists across the U.S., offering both virtual and in-person sessions, nights and weekends. You can search by what matters to you, like insurance or their specialty or their identity, or even their availability, and you can get started in as little as 2 days. And if something comes up, you can cancel up to 24 hours in advance at no cost. There are no subscriptions, no long-term commitments. You just pay per session. Grow helps you find therapy on your time. Whatever challenges you're facing, Grow Therapy is here to help. Sessions average about $21 with insurance, and some pay as little as $0 depending on their plan. Visit growtherapy.com/noise today to get started. That's growtherapy.com/noise. growtherapy.com/noise. Availability and coverage vary by state and insurance plan. This show is sponsored by MIDI Health. Let's be real. Midlife healthcare for women, historically trash. If you've been told like I have, it's just aging or you'll be fine when you're not sleeping, you're sweating through your sheets, or feeling like a stranger in your own body, you are very much not alone. Even today, 75% of women seeking menopause or perimenopause care are left untreated. That's not okay. But there's good news. It's time for MIDI. MIDI is a women's telehealth clinic founded by experts in midlife health and they actually listen. You get one-on-one, face-to-face care tailored to your unique needs. And they're the only women's telehealth brand covered by major insurance, making expert care accessible and affordable. From hormone therapy to weight loss support and lifestyle coaching, MIDI has your back. Ready to feel your best and write your second act script? Visit joinmidi.com today to book your personalized, insurance-covered virtual visit. That's joinmidi.com. MIDI, the care women deserve.
Every story you love, every invention that moves you, every idea you wished was yours, all began as nothing. Just a blank page with a blinking cursor, asking a simple question. What do you see? Great ideas start on Mac. Find out more on apple.com/Mac.
All right, let's talk about practicing choosing yourself, making yourself the sun in your life, and what it has to do with your nervous system. So when we're practicing this, it is also important to practice using your voice. So what I always recommend is doing low risk areas first. So you are going to think about things that you get asked to do maybe on the regular, maybe you're on the PTA at your kid's school and you get asked to do some things from time to time, and some of them are not your favorite and you don't want to do it, and you know it can be delegated to someone else. It would just be an inconvenience for somebody else. Those are the types of things I'm talking about when it's low stakes, or maybe it's at work. This is what I do, a lot of executive coaching and leadership coaching. And this is something that we do a decent amount, especially with my women clients who are trying to set more boundaries and trying to delegate more. Try low stakes at first. You need the proof. Your nervous system needs the proof, the evidence that you are not going to die if you say no to certain people, to certain tasks that you are expected to do because you've not had maybe great boundaries in the past. So start there and use your voice. Also, nervous system work. I am a big fan of scheduled anger and venting release. This is tricky because it helps to get it out in the moment. And I also know for women, anger and rage especially tends to be the emotion that we shove down the most and get really good and masterful at not feeling. And so it's a little bit tricky. So if you can, if you get really, something pisses you off, if you can, even if it's like you got to take some extra steps to do it, either hit the video app or a voice memo and get out, actually record yourself, whether it's just voice or video, being angry at whatever it is that you're angry at. This is kind of like a letter you'll never send type of thing. Voice it out. Assume that no one will hear it or ever see it. Do that. Even if it's just to say that you did something that I recommended from my podcast. This is something that I will always hold sacred and encourage women to do. You need the practice to get out the emotions that are real and valid, and they matter, and they have a lot of energy behind them. And guess what happens when that energy isn't released? It lives in your body. It lives in your tissues. It will push you to make decisions that you probably don't really want to make. Any kind of emotion, especially the ones that tend to be heavier, those will dictate your behavior probably more than you think it will. Even the old ones that I call it holy ghosts. A haunted house gets created in your mind. The holy ghosts still live there, aka your emotions that were never released. Do what you can to release them. If it needs to be scheduled and have those venting release moments, if you can do it in the moment, even better. Okay, next up, some boundary work. I have other episodes where I go in depth in boundaries, I have a whole chapter on how stop feeling like shit about this. I'm not going to go into how to set a boundary, but I am going to tell you to find how to set them. There is so much information on the internet, in books, on podcasts, PDFs. AI can help you probably have a outline of how to set a boundary. And then from there, have a clear consequence script, if you need one, in terms of if and when, it's probably a when, the boundary isn't honored. Even if you set a small boundary or you set a big boundary, likely it's going to be tested and pushed, stepped over. So if you have a script of what you will and will not tolerate, or the implications, the consequences of someone else not honoring your boundary, that is going to help you with your nervous system, because you're going to be using your voice, even if it's email. Have something that's in your back pocket, even that you can go to, that you say, that feels good to you, that still honors your values, that's still kind, because in the moment you are probably not going to know what to say. If anything gets emotional or you get nervous, which is emotional, that will make it so it's not clear in your brain about what to say. This is where people falter, and this is where people go back on their boundaries. So have something clear to say. Also, boundary work. This is also about reframing something very, very specific. So when we start to set boundaries, we are basically naming our needs. We're naming our wants and needs. And some people don't like that. Some people don't like what we want and need. Some people don't like that we are stating it, the boundary, in the first place. Sometimes it's both. Sometimes they don't like that we're speaking up for ourselves, finally, and they don't like what it is that we are speaking up for. And so we automatically clock that as being disliked. And that might very well be true. That person might dislike you. I can't promise you that they don't. But when we do that, when we clock that someone doesn't like us, when we have needs, we're telling our nervous system that it is not safe for us to ever communicate our needs. So that's where the habit starts of centering someone else and their comfort in order for us to be comfortable. And that's what I'm pointing to in terms of this boundary. So the reframe is that if you are disliked for having needs and communicating them, or even if you think that you are disliked for having needs and communicating them, that is just data. It is just information. It is not a catastrophe. It is not a crisis. It does not mean that we are going to die. And I know that that might sound dramatic and ridiculous, but truly our nervous system thinks that it's a catastrophe, that it's a crisis. So it will automatically move into putting someone else first in order to avoid that catastrophe. So this is just about reframing that when you communicate your boundaries, when you communicate your needs and your wants, and someone else is either shocked by it or doesn't like it, it's just information. This is a hard one. That is a hard one to accept, and it is work. That's why it's on the list of solutions. Next up, practices in key areas of your life. I wanted to give some clear examples of what decentering men or other people might look like in different areas of your life. Let's start with work. So this might look like making sure that you practice speaking first instead of not saying anything at all in meetings. This might look like tracking interruptions. Sometimes it's helpful for you to, say you have a coworker or somebody who you feel like they don't really hear you. I invite you to track, even if it's in your head, how many times they interrupt you in a meeting. This is not for HR purposes. This is for you to have evidence in your mind that it's really happening. Because sometimes we start to gaslight ourselves that we're, no, they're not that bad. It's fine. Whatever. It will make you more likely to actually stop the person, to reclaim whatever it was that you were saying in the moment if you get cut off, or bring it to the person later, or figure out a way to not have to have meetings with that person anymore. Maybe you don't even need to have meetings with this person anymore, but you keep having them. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, I'm wanting you to collect whatever information that you need to have in order to prove to yourself that the thing is might actually be happening, so you can take action on it. Okay. So those are some work examples. In partnerships, it might look like taking some inventory if you feel like, or you suspect you might be the person who takes care of you and your partner's emotional regulation. So think about how you regulate your own emotions. It may not be perfect, but just how do you do it? In other words, do you go for a walk if you're angry? Do you pause? Do you if something happens and there's a little bit of a crisis, do you hold on to your own emotions until afterwards or later to be able to do the crisis? So that's kind of some quick examples of what emotional regulation can look like. But in your partnership, are you someone who also maybe puts your own emotions aside in order to take care of someone else's first, your partner's emotions first? Do you overcompensate or tiptoe around certain topics, or avoid certain topics altogether, avoid certain boundaries altogether, because you worry that it's going to be too much for the other person to process emotionally? Or do you find maybe it's very clear to you that you regulate not only your own emotions, but your partner's, and they don't reciprocate? They are not someone who can help you regulate your own emotions. They're not someone that you would consider is someone who's emotionally and psychologically safe for you to show up with all of your emotions and have them make you feel better. Because that's what a reciprocal relationship would look like in that. Maybe it's that, you just taking inventory of it. Or maybe if you are someone who, you're the person that drops everything for certain people when they text you and they have some kind of emergency or they need you for really anything. So it might be looking at that, or texting them back and saying, I'm in the middle of something. Can this wait until after 6 o'clock? Those are small things. Those are small examples to practice in your life. Or maybe you have mutual check-ins. This is something that Dr. Fox and I have implemented in our relationship. And we're doing about every 6 months now, where it's a place for us to go about conversation where we come together, and it's about specific areas. And these conversations, we don't bring any like major bombs during these conversations. So I told him, I'm like, then neither of us are ever going to want to have them. We're going to dread them. But it's instead a place of like, hey, here's a place that I would love for us to look at a little bit more. Or here's something I've been thinking about. It just gives you, it's a check-in, really, is all it is. And maybe that's something that you could practice in your partnership, is if it's something that you want to improve on. Okay, next up, this is one of my favorites, and it's about shifting your environment. So I did this, I've done this around different areas in my life a couple of different times, and it's a media inventory and perhaps a media detox. And it's about seeking out, for example, more women-centered content. So if we're talking about just social media, so maybe it's about maybe someone could focus on unfollowing sort of these aspirational fitness influencers and maybe following more women who talk about a particular topic that you're really interested in. Maybe it's, I don't know, women who focus on the gifts of menopause, or maybe if you're raising young children, it's moms who are still able to put themselves first. Like, I'm being very niche specific here, but it's really just about looking for more women-centered content. Maybe it's about, documentaries that you watch, or movies that you watch. I remember I was watching early in our relationship, there was a comedy, it was like a classic cult comedy that I had never seen before. And I watched it with Dr. Fox, and like halfway through the movie, he says to me, I just realized there's no women in this cast. And I was like, I noticed that right away. So it's like, it's not surprising to me that a man would not notice, but I think that sometimes we don't even notice things like that, like how much we're consuming that is perhaps either male-centered or, children centric, that focuses just on parenting, and how much that impacts you in the long run. And I'm going to say one more thing about shifting your environment. But before I do, I want to acknowledge the difficulty that this is when you are in a place of what I call in the weeds. So whether you are partnered or you're a single mom, I have found that having children under about the age of, I'm going to say around 12, is incredibly difficult to shift to focusing on yourself and centering yourself. I have found in my own experience in coaching lots and lots of women, especially mothers who are at different phases of their mothering career, is that time is just, your energy is mostly taken up by mothering and your capacity is low. So I just wanted to acknowledge that it's trickier. It's trickier than when your children are past that age, or if you are child-free, then just want to say, I see ya. I see you ladies over there. All right. The last thing about shifting your environment is around your friendships. What do your female friendships look like in your life? Are they healthy? They need more nurturing? Are they having a season of, not having a lot of friends, or you don't have a lot of time with them? That's something to think about, perhaps where you can focus on that a little bit. Do you have any mentorship relationships at work or otherwise? Are you mentoring anyone? Is anyone mentoring you? Basically, just redirecting your energy into more women's spaces. I'm going to say that again, redirecting your energy into more women's spaces. And that can be online. That can be what you're consuming online, the comments you're engaging with on social media, obviously online. It can be that too, but you are redirecting your energy into women's spaces. All right, we need to take one more ad break. We get back. I'm going to wrap it up. Be right back.
I'm always looking for ways to show my cat how much I love her. And with Fancy Feast gems, I can pamper her whenever I want with a savory gravy on top of a gourmet mousse pâté. The pyramid shape makes serving simple, so all I have to do is peel and plate to make mealtime feel extra fancy. And with 2 entrees in every pack, it's easy to turn every day into the extraordinary. Fancy Feast gems.
The family that vacations together stays together. At least, that was the plan. Except now, the dastardly desk clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for the stay.
Finished training for the day? Time to fight post-workout fatigue with Core Power Protein Shakes. They're packed with 26 grams of high-quality protein to build muscle and electrolytes to help hydrate. The nutrition you need to help your body replenish, rebuild, and repair post-workout so you can power on to the next one. Champion your recovery with Core Power. Visit corepower.com to learn more.
All right. The last one is about money. And I wanted to save this one until the last because it is specific around decentering men. And I talk about this in Make Some Noise. There's a whole chapter dedicated to it. But I mean, I don't need to tell you the research and things like that. I think that the moment I really started to pay attention was when I read that women who are divorced tend to fare far worse than their male counterparts who are divorced. So it depends on the study that you're looking at, but divorced women often face a pretty significant financial decline from divorce. It depends on what study you're looking at, anywhere from like 20 to 41% of a household income drop. They're more likely to experience poverty than married women. And, things like child support payments and things like that can also come into play. But those stats and wait for it. While women may increase their work hours, or get a second job, the research shows that it's frequently not enough to compensate for the loss of their spouse's income. And while men who are divorced tend to either have the same financial place that they're in, or it gets better for them on average, divorced men. And so when I read that stat, as I was going through my own divorce and looking at everything, that made me want to flip tables. I don't know about you, but it absolutely made me want to flip tables. And it just made me think about what we're taught as girls and women. And this comes back to me, and not even necessarily in terms of education and knowledge around financial independence, but more so in kind of what gets us to that place of having a 20 to 41% income drop after we get divorced. And if you ask me, I am not a financial expert nor an expert in divorce. This is merely my opinion, but I think it has a lot to do with how we sent in a heterosexual marriage. We tend to center men around money. And even if we have our own money, and even if we're involved in the investments and the financial planning, many times it can come down to the fact that we make men the sun in our life, the SUN, and we revolve around them. And therefore, it contributes to this particular statistic. So divorce aside, even if you are someone who is happily in a relationship or married, it's still important to reduce dependency on anyone else, no matter what. And we're not taught to do this. We may be told, but very rarely are we taught. So it comes to us. So maybe for you, this exercise is just looking at your finances and where you might center your male partner in terms of the finances. That's all. Maybe that's all you look at for this. Okay, before we close up, there's a couple of things that I want to say. One is that decentering men isn't about rejecting men at all. It's not about being mad at them. It's not about hating them at all. I love men. And it's about claiming yourself. That's it. It's about claiming yourself in a system and a culture and a society that has taught us to not do that, to not make ourselves the priority in our own lives, to the point where we get to a place in our lives where sometimes we look around and we're like, how did I get here to this place where I have so much work to do and just making my life about me and not other people? Or whether you get to a place where you are physically sick and you think it might be because you have been self-abandoning your whole life. That's it. That's really what it is. And I don't say like that's it to be dismissive of what it really is, but it's that's what it's about. It's not about hating men at all. It's learning how to live slightly differently than what our current system taught us to do. So with that, again, I ask you to pick one or two of the areas that I talked about in this particular show. Maybe it's just about thinking more deeply on them, taking some inventory of what it looks like in your life, or maybe it is taking action. And hopefully I gave enough examples in there in terms of what to do so you can gather some more information for you, because that's really what it is. And with that, there are some things I should tell you. If you start taking action, you might also be scanning for backlash. You might feel guilty. You also might be pushing a little too fast for you or the people that you're in these relationships with. So you're definitely going to get information for sure, whether it just comes from you or whether it comes from the people around you and the environment. And so just keep track of that. Make sure that you are doing things that still honor your values and that will, at the very least, and I'm not saying this because it's less than, it's still important, at the very least is giving you information. It might not necessarily be changing your whole life. That's not really what personal growth is about. It's about getting the information so you can have the self-awareness, so you can figure out where you are on this path around this particular topic, because you deserve to be your own sun in your life. You deserve to be the steady, constant that determines what happens in your life and the choices that you make. You deserve to not have to unconsciously be scanning for other people's emotions and their comfort and what's important to them, what's best for them. You matter. It's important for you to get to a place where you automatically scan for your own comfort, your own values, and what's important to you first before anyone else. That's really what this is about. That's what this whole podcast is about. Thank you for coming with me. I appreciate your time. And remember, it's our life's journey to make ourselves better humans and our life's responsibility to make the world a better place. Bye for now. Hey, did you know there's free secret podcast episodes waiting for you that are not part of my regular podcast feed? Yes, AndreaOwen.com/free. And you just sign up. You get a link sent to you. It's very secret. It's like a secret club. We don't have a secret handshake. Don't worry about that. But it's these motivating podcast episodes that I made for you. They're under 20 minutes each. There's 3 of them. They're for wherever you are in your life. So head on over there and grab them. They range from really supporting you and seeing you where you are and being compassionate, all the way to giving you a giant kick in your ass and telling you how amazing and gorgeous and phenomenal you are. So AndreaOwen.com/free and get your hands on that free podcast feed.